Time being, this should work. Now, why is my blue snowball plug not plugged in? Oh, it got unplugged from the back. Interesting. Okay. So I was talking about nothing for a long time. I really need to figure out a way to be more professional when it comes to audio. There we go. Time being, this should work. Oh. Now my stream has caught up. Oh, it got unplugged from the back. I thought it was unplugged from the tower. Okay. So I was talking about nothing for a long time. I really need to figure out a way
Stop
to
doing that.
be more professional when it comes to audio. There we go. Time being, this should work.
Oh.
Now my stream has caught up. Oh.
Now I actually get to see what the difference is.
I thought it was unplugged from the tower. Okay. So I was talking about nothing for a long time. I really need to figure out a way
Stop
to
doing that.
be more professional when it comes to audio. There we go. Time being, this should work.
Oh.
Now my stream has caught up. Oh.
Now I actually get to see what the difference is.
I thought it was unplugged from the tower. So I was talking about nothing.
So, what does my audio sound like now?
Stop doing that. Be more professional when it comes to audio. There we go. Oh. Now my stream has caught up. Oh.
Now I actually get to see what the difference is.
I thought it was unplugged from the tower.
Oh, this is so trippy. So, what does my audio sound like now?
Stop doing that. Be more professional.
Oh, wow. That's really neat. Alright, good stuff. So, what is going on in the world of going on? I have no clue what I'm working on right now. So, one of the things I'm interested in is reading the Constitution, I reckon. So, let's go ahead and start doing it. If I can spell. Constitution of the United States, the supreme law of the United States. Alright, the preamble. We, the people of the United States, in order to perform a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. Now, we need to ensure domestic tranquility, establish justice, form a more perfect union, so strive for constant improvement. Provide for the common defense. Sure. This makes sense in a world of turmoil. Sure. Promote the general welfare. Sounds like this could be interpreted in multiple different ways. And secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Interesting. So, Article 1. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. So it's saying all legislative powers shall be granted, what herein granted. So in the Constitution, any legislative powers shall be granted, like granted by this Constitution, shall be vested in a Congress of the United States. Alright. Sure. Interesting. The House of Representatives shall be composed of members chosen every second year by the people of the several states, and the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. Okay. We'll read through it, and then we'll read the explained, alright? Well, let's go ahead and take a moment to read what they say. Preamble. Alright, let's go ahead. So the preamble introduces the American Constitution. Its majestic words are the first words people see when they read the Constitution, and it's a common ritual that school children throughout the nation memorize the preamble when learning about the nation's founding document. So what are these little notes for? See the Constitution preamble, see Henry Conserva understanding the Constitution. Sure. Plenty of footnotes. The preamble itself imparts three central concepts to the reader. 1. The source of power to enact the Constitution, i.e. the people of the United States. So the people of the United States are who choose whether or not to uphold the Constitution. Interesting. The broad ends to which the Constitution is ordained and established, and the author's intent for the Constitution to be a legal instrument of lasting posterity. Yet, as discussed in more detail below, the preamble's origins and its continued relevance in constitutional law are unclear, and for many people, unknown. The uncertainties surrounding the preamble may be surprising, as the Constitution's introduction would seem central to any debate over the document's meaning. And in fact, at least two of the Founding Fathers appeared to view the preamble as an important feature of the document, critical to the legal framework it established. James Monroe, as a delegate to the Virginia Ratifying Convention, referred to the preamble as the key of the Constitution. And Alexander Hamilton argued in the Federalist number 84 that the existence of the preamble obviated any need for a Bill of Rights. I believe this means like made redundant, but I do want to make sure we define it. The presence of worldly rights, what? Okay. Alright, no, removed. So it removed any need for a Bill of Rights. Nonetheless, the preamble was not the subject of any extensive debate at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, having been added to the Constitution as an apparent afterthought during its final drafting process. In the years following the Constitution's enactment, the Supreme Court of the United States cited the preamble in several important judicial decisions. But the legal weight of the preamble was largely disclaimed. As Justice Joseph Story noted in his commentaries, the preamble never can be resorted to enlarge the powers confided to the general government, or any of its departments. The Supreme Court subsequently endorsed Justice Story's view of the preamble, holding in Jacobson v. Massachusetts that while the Constitution's introductory paragraph indicates the general purposes for which the people ordained and established the Constitution, it has never been regarded by the court as the source for any substantive power conferred on the federal government. Nonetheless, while the court has not viewed the preamble as having any direct substantive legal effect, the court has referenced the broad precepts of the Constitution's introduction to confirm and reinforce its interpretation of other provisions within the document. As such, while the preamble does not have any specific legal status, Justice Story's observation that the true office of the preamble is to expound the nature and extent and application of the powers actually conferred by the Constitution. All right, let's revisit that sentence. That was pretty okay. As such, while the preamble does not have any specific legal status, Justice Story's observation that the true office of the preamble is to expound the nature and extent and the application of the powers actually conferred by the Constitution appears to capture its import. More broadly, while the preamble may have little significance in a court of law, the preface to the Constitution remains an important part of the nation's constitutional dialogue, inspiring and fostering broader understandings of the American system of government. In this vein, this essay considers the origins of the preamble, exploring its historical roots and how it came to be a part of the Constitution, before discussing the legal and practical significance of the Constitution's opening words in the time since the ratification. Sure. Historical background to the preamble. The preamble's origins predate the Constitutional Convention. Preambles to legal documents were relatively commonplace at the time of the nation's founding. In several English laws that undergird American understandings of constitutional rights, including the Petition of Rights of 1621, the Habeas Corpus Act of 1679, the Bill of Rights of 1689, and the Act of Settlement in 1701, the British Parliament included prefatory texts that explained the law's objects and historical impetus. The tradition of a legal preamble continued in the New World. The declarations and resolves of the First Continental Congress in 1774 included a preamble noting the many grievances the 13 colonies held against British rule. Building on this document, and perhaps the only preamble that rivals the fame of the Constitution's opening lines, the Declaration of Independence of 1776 announced, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." The Declaration then listed a series of complaints against King George III, before culminating in a formal declaration of the colony's independence from the British Crown. Moreover, several state constitutions at the time of the founding contained introductory texts that echoed many of the themes of the 1776 Declaration. The Articles of Confederation that preceded the Constitution had their own preamble, authored by we, the undersigned delegates of the states, declaring the Confederation and perpetual union of the 13 former colonies. While the concept of a preamble was well known to the Constitution's framers, little debate occurred at the Philadelphia Convention with respect to whether the Constitution required prefatory texts, or as to the particular text agreed upon by the delegates. For the first 2 months of the convention, no proposal was made to include a preamble on the Constitution's text. In late July 1787, the convention's Committee of Detail was formed to prepare a draft of the Constitution, and during those deliberations, committee member Edmund Randolph of Virginia suggested for the first time that a preamble seems proper. Importantly, however, Randolph considered the Constitution to be a legal as opposed to a philosophical document, and rejected the idea of having a lengthy display of theory to explain the ends of government and human politics, akin to the Declaration of Independence's preamble or those of several state constitutions. Articulating what would ultimately become the preamble's underlying rationale, Randolph instead argued that any prefatory texts to the Constitution should be limited to explaining why the government under the Articles of Confederation was insufficient, and why the establishment of a supreme legislative, executive, and judiciary was necessary. The initial draft of the Constitution's preamble was, however, fairly brief and did not specify the Constitution's objectives. As released by the Committee of Detail on August 6, 1787, this draft stated, "We, the people of the United States of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Providence Plantations, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, do ordain, declare, and establish the following Constitution for the government of ourselves and our posterity." While this draft was passed unanimously by the delegates, the preamble underwent significant changes after the draft of the Constitution was referred to the Committee of Style on September 8th of 1787. The Committee of Style. Ooh la la. Perhaps with the understanding that the inclusion of all 13 of the states in the preamble was more prefatory than realistic. The Committee of Style Gouverneur Morris of Pennsylvania, replaced the opening phrase of the Constitution with the now familiar introduction, we with a burp, "We, the people of the United States." Moreover, the preamble, as altered by Morris, listed 6 broad goals for the Constitution. 1. To form a more perfect union. 2. Establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, and promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty. The record from the Philadelphia Convention is silent. However, as to why the Committee of Style altered the preamble, The record from the Philadelphia Convention is silent, however, as to why the Committee of Style altered the preamble, and there is no evidence of any objection to the changes the committee made to the final version of the preamble. So everybody was pretty chill about it, unless winners write the history, so, who cares if somebody said anything? It's in there. Alright. While the preamble did not provoke any further discussion in the Philadelphia Convention, the first words of the Constitution factored prominently in the ratifying debates that followed. For instance, Anti-Federalists, led by Patrick Henry of Virginia, criticized the opening lines of the Constitution at the Virginia Ratifying Convention. Who authorized them to speak the language of we the people instead of we the states? States are the characteristics and the soul of a confederation. If the states be not the agents of this compact, it must be one great consolidated national government of the people of all the states. Well, in response, Edmund Pendleton replied, "Who but the people can delegate powers? Who but the people have the right to form a government? Similarly, John Marshall declared that both state and federal governments derive their powers from the people, and each was to act according to the powers given it." Echoing these themes, the Pennsylvania Ratification Convention, James Wilson defended we the people language, arguing that all authority is derived from the people, and that the preamble merely announces the inoffensive principle that people have a right to do what they please with regard to the government. Now that's fair. Now that's very important. It says so on the national website. The preamble also figured into the written debates over whether to ratify the Constitution. For instance, countering criticisms that the Constitution lacked a Bill of Rights, Alexander Hamilton in Federalist No. 84 quoted the preamble, arguing it obviated any need for enumeration of rights. An anti-federalist pamphlet authored under the pseudonym Brutus, noting the preamble's references to a more perfect union and to establishment of justice, argued that the Constitution would result in the invalidation of state laws that interfered with these objectives, resulting in abolition of all inferior governments, and giving the general one complete legislative, executive, and judicial powers to every purpose. Ooh, important criticism. While not disputing the need for the national union in the wake of their experience, under the Articles of Confederation, supporters of the Constitution rejected the notion that their proposed government was a national one, because its jurisdiction extends to certain enumerated objects only and leaves to the several states a residuary and inviolable sovereignty over all other objects. Indeed, indeed, indeed. In particular, those writings in support of the Constitution's ratification cited the preamble's language, the Constitution's goals of establishing justice and securing the blessings of liberty, prompted by the perception that state governments at the time of the framing were violating individual liberties, including property rights, through the tyranny of popular majorities, was a central theme of the Federalist Papers. For instance, in Federalist Number 51, James Madison described justice as the end of government and civil society, that has been and ever will be pursued until it be obtained, or until liberty be lost in the pursuit. Similarly, the Constitution's goals of ensuring domestic tranquility and providing the common defense, were noted in the Federalist Papers, later attributed to John Jay and Alexander Hamilton, who described both the foreign threats and the interstate conflicts that faced a disunited America as an argument for ratification. Finally, the preamble's references to the common defense and general welfare, which mirrored the language of the Articles of Confederation, were understood by the framers, like James Madison, to underscore that the new federal government under the Constitution would generally provide for the national good better than the government it was replacing. For example, calling the Confederation's efforts to provide for the common defense and general welfare an ill-founded and illusory experiment, Alexander Hamilton in the Federalist Number 23 argued for a central government with the full power to levy troops, to build and equip fleets, to raise revenues for an army and navy, and to otherwise manage the national interest. Interesting. Nonetheless, there is no historical evidence suggesting the Constitution's framers conceived of a preamble with any substantive legal effect, such as granting power to the new government or conferring rights to those subject to the federal government. Instead, the founding generation appeared to view the Constitution's prefatory text as generally providing the foundation for the text that followed. In doing so, the preamble ultimately reflects three critical understandings that the framers had about the Constitution. First, the preamble specified the source of the federal government's sovereignty as the people. And second, the Constitution's introduction articulated 6 broad purposes, all grounded in the historical experience of being governed under the Articles of Confederation. And finally, and perhaps most critically, the preamble, with its conclusion that this Constitution was established for ourselves and our posterity, underscored that, unlike the constitutions in Great Britain and elsewhere at the time of the founding, the American Constitution was a written and permanent document that would serve as a stable guide for the new nation. And now we're going to explore the legal effect of the preamble. In the years following the Constitution's ratification, the preamble has had a relatively minor role as a matter of legal doctrine, but an outsized role, particularly outside of the courtroom, in broadly embodying the American constitutional vision. With regard to the legal effect of the Constitution's preface, in the early years of the Supreme Court, it did reference the preamble's words in some of the most important cases interpreting the Constitution. For example, in 1793, 2 members of the court cited the preamble in Chisholm v. Georgia to argue that the people, in establishing the Constitution, necessarily subjected the state of Georgia to the jurisdiction of the federal